Welcome back to Blasphemous Chronicles. Today we aren't here to discuss high-level metaphysics or the architecture of invisible prisons in a vacuum. Today we are talking about a man named Arthur, and we are talking about the most dangerous lie ever sold to the working man, the myth of the hero's return. In every Hollywood script, in every ancient epic, and in every motivational speech, the narrative is the same. You go out, you face the dragon, you suffer, you win, and you come back home to the cheers of your tribe. You bring the elixir, the solution, the gold, the cure, and suddenly the world makes sense again. But that's not how the system works in 2026. In the real world, the dragon doesn't want to kill you. It wants to transform you into a spare part. And the return isn't a celebration. It's a collision between the man you were forced to become and the ghosts of the people you left behind. Think about the environment that birthed Arthur. We are talking about the Rust Belt, a place where the term economy is just a polite word for a slow-motion funeral. In these corners of the world, the factories didn't just close their doors, they rotted from the inside out, taking the town's pulse with them. When the industry leaves, it takes the gravity. Everything starts to float away, dignity, purpose, and the very structure of a family. Arthur stood in his kitchen, a space that should have been the heart of his sovereignty, and instead, it was a courtroom where the final notices on the table were the judge, jury, and executioner. His youngest daughter's cough in the next room wasn't just a cold. It was the sound of a house that had lost its warmth, because the system decided Arthur's town was no longer efficient. This is where the hero's journey actually begins, not with a call to adventure, but with a terrifying realization that staying is a death sentence. Arthur's story is the story of every individual who has ever realized that dignity is a luxury he can no longer afford. We are told that hard work is the path to sovereignty, but we are never told about the toll. By the time you earn the money to save your home, you might have become someone who no longer knows how to live in it. Arthur didn't just travel across the country to the coast. He traveled across the boundaries of his own humanity. He moved from the warmth of a decaying home into the freezing indifference of a gray labyrinth, designed to strip him of everything but his utility. The system demands a pound of flesh, but it prefers a gallon of your soul. It wants you to become a ghost in a suit of denim, a unit of labor that functions until it breaks. In this video, we follow Arthur into the mouth of the city to watch him navigate the traps set for the desperate, the false prophets, promising divine algorithms and the digital sirens calling from the purple glow of a smartphone screen. We will see how a man of flesh and blood is ground down into a mechanical instrument of survival. This is the hollow time, where you stop being a father or a husband, and you become a name on an envelope, or a frozen face on a grainy phone screen. The city doesn't just use your muscles, it consumes your presence. You become a myth to your own family while the chair at the dinner table grows cold, and your children's voices change into tones you no longer recognize. We will talk about Elias, the mentor who taught Arthur how to read the blueprints of greed. We will talk about Miller, the subcontractor who represents a predatory system that views human labor as a disposable resource. And we will talk about the two great temptations, the grotesque theater of Pepe the Clown, and his gospel of prosperity, and the hypnotic violet hum of the purple platform. Both offer an exit, but both require you to surrender your reality in exchange for a simulation of success. Arthur's struggle is the ultimate test of the individual against a landscape that wants to format him like a hard drive. Finally, we will witness the most terrifying part of the cycle, the moment he steps back through his own front door. Because the tragedy isn't that Arthur failed. The tragedy is that he succeeded exactly the way the system wanted him to. He saved the house, he secured the future, but in the process he became an alien to his own children. He won the war against the city, but the man who stepped off that bus wasn't the man who boarded it years ago. He is a stranger holding a bag of gadgets for children he no longer truly knows. He has the elixir, but his hands are too cold to hold the warmth of his wife's hug. So sit down, get comfortable, but don't get relaxed. We are about to decode the anatomy of a broken homecoming. This is the story of a man who won the war and lost his world. If you've ever felt like you're becoming a stranger to your own life while trying to provide for it, this is for you. This is Arthur's journey. This is your warning. We are going back to that kitchen in the Rust Belt and into the gray glass labyrinth of the coast. Pay attention to the silence, because that is where the truth of the transaction is hidden. By the end of this, you'll understand why the most expensive thing you will ever own is the life you had to destroy just to pay for your survival. The return is not a homecoming. It is the final inspection of the damage. Let's begin. The midnight coach didn't just carry Arthur away from his hometown, it severed the umbilical cord of his old reality. When he stepped off onto the coast, he wasn't greeted by opportunity, but by a wall of gray glass and an atmosphere of profound indifference. The city is a machine that never sleeps, and its first task is to make you feel small. Arthur found himself living in a hotbed tenement, a space where the air was thick with the smell of unwashed denim and the desperation of 3 other strangers who shared the same room on rotating shifts. You don't sleep in a place like that, you merely wait for your turn to exist. His days were spent standing outside hardware stores, his breath visible in the morning chill, competing with men half his age for the privilege of destroying his back for a handful of crumpled bills. This was the city rain, a cold, greasy drizzle that doesn't just wet your skin, it soaks into your bones, carrying the soot and the cynicism of a million passing cars. Arthur became a ghost, a shadow in a suit of work clothes, invisible to the thousands of people rushing past him to their air-conditioned offices, their eyes fixed on screens that told them he didn't exist. It was in this state of total exhaustion that Arthur first encountered the great distractions. One Tuesday, shivering and hollow-eyed, he followed a crowd into a basement illuminated by harsh, flickering neons. This was the headquarters of the Church of the Last Bit, led by a man the locals called Pepe the Clown. Pepe didn't wear a red nose, but his teeth were too white, his suit was too shiny, and his smile was a masterpiece of plastic surgery. Pepe stood on a stage, pacing like a caged predator, screaming into a gold-plated microphone that poverty was a mindset error, and that God was a celestial CEO looking for high-performance partners. "Seed your future," Pepe would howl, pointing his manicured finger at men who hadn't eaten a hot meal in days. "Give your last $10 to the ministry, and the divine algorithm will return it 100-fold. Arthur watched as people who looked exactly like him wept and pressed their last crumpled bills into velvet bags. It was his first taste of the modern deshumanization, the industry of hope that preys on the hopeless, turning the spirit into a Ponzi scheme. Arthur felt the urge to give, to believe that a miracle could be bought, but the cold weight of the tools in his bag reminded him that in the real world, miracles don't have a subscription fee. He escaped the neons only to find another kind of light on the construction site. This was where he met Elias, an old crane operator whose skin looked like cured leather, and whose eyes had the flat, distant stare of someone who had seen every economic collapse since the 70s. Elias was the only one who didn't look through Arthur. He didn't offer pity because pity is just another form of condescension. Instead, Elias offered technical truth. "They don't pay you for your sweat, kid," Elias told him over a thermos of black coffee that tasted like battery acid. "Every idiot can sweat. They pay you for what you can endure that they can't. They pay you for the silence you keep while they grind your life into the foundation of these buildings." Elias taught Arthur how to read the blueprints of the city's greed, showing him that these skyscrapers weren't built for people, but as vertical vaults for capital. He showed him how to fix the machines the younger, frantic men broke out of haste. Under Elias, Arthur stopped being a victim and started becoming an instrument. But the machine has many faces. During the double shifts, while Arthur was cleaning the skeletal remains of half-finished offices at 3 a.m., he met Mia. She was a fellow ghost, a girl who had come to the city with dreams that had been systematically dismantled by the cost of rent. During their breaks in the drafty trailers, Arthur saw the purple platform. Mia didn't use her hands to work. She used a ring light and a smartphone. She would sit in a corner, her face bathed in a hypnotic violet glow, talking to thousands of lonely men she would never meet. "Why break your back, Arthur?" she asked him once, her eyes reflecting the purple flicker of the screen. "On the platform, I sell access to my soul. I sell the illusion of presence. The system doesn't want your muscles, it wants your intimacy. People will pay more to watch you suffer or smile in a bedroom than they will ever pay to see you build a bridge." Arthur looked at the screen, at the flow of digital coins and the comments of anonymous strangers, and he felt the vertigo of the void. It was the second great temptation, the digital siren call to stop being a man of flesh and to become a digital commodity, to sell the very thing he was trying to protect, his private self, just to pay for the survival of his public self. The pressure intensified when Miller, the subcontractor, decided to show his true colors. Miller was a man who smelled of expensive cologne and the sweat of people he had never met. He was a creature of shell companies and strategic bankruptcies. After a month of double shifts in the freezing rain, Miller called the crew into a trailer and told them there was no money. The company was restructuring. He spoke about market fluctuations and unforeseen liabilities, as if he were talking about the weather, while men like Arthur were wondering how they would pay for their children's medicine. When Arthur confronted him, demanding the money his family was counting on for the winter, Miller didn't argue. He didn't even get angry. He simply looked at Arthur as if he were a malfunctioning piece of equipment. He called security and had Arthur blacklisted from every major site on the coast. In that moment, Arthur realized the finality of the system. You are only human as long as you are profitable. The moment you demand justice, you become a risk factor to be deleted. This was the beginning of the hollow time. Arthur lost his room in the tenement. He moved his single duffel bag into the back of a scrapped van in a junkyard. He was starving, his body was failing, and the shame was so heavy it felt like lead in his chest. He stopped calling home. He couldn't bear to hear his wife's voice asking about the money. He couldn't bear to see his children's faces through a screen, watching them grow taller while he grew smaller. He moved through the streets with the silent, desperate focus of a hunted animal, avoiding the neons of Pepe the Clown and the violet light of the purple platform. He was stripped bare, down to the marrow, waiting for the end or a new beginning. He was a man who had left home to find life and found only the machinery of the void. The transaction had begun in earnest, and the price was everything he thought he knew about himself. We need to pause here because what Arthur is experiencing isn't just a series of unfortunate events, it is a systematic deconstruction of the individual. While Arthur is shivering in that scrapped van, caught between the predatory gospel of prosperity and the soul-selling purple platform, he is being mapped. Every desperate move he makes is a data point for a system that thrives on the erosion of your sovereignty. This is exactly what we analyze and dismantle every day at Blasphemous Chronicles. The story of Arthur is a mirror. If you are watching this, it's because you recognize the frequency. You know that the hotbed tenements of the city have been replaced by the digital gig economy, and the gray labyrinth is now the very screen you are holding. But you don't have to navigate this blind. We have built a sanctuary for those who refuse to be just another line of code in Miller's ledger. Stop being a spectator to your own obsolescence. I want you to go right now to our website. This is where the real work happens. On our website, you will find the deep dive essays, the architectural blueprints of the modern control systems, and the community of those who have decided to stop paying for their survival with their souls. We provide the tools that Elias didn't have time to give Arthur, the intellectual and sovereign gear. You need to protect your elixir before the city tries to dilute it. Don't wait until you are sleeping in a scrapped van of your own life to start looking for the exit. The knowledge is there, the resistance is active, and the door is open. Go to the site, sign up for the Chronicles, and take back the narrative. Because if you don't define your own reality, I promise you someone like Pepe the Clown or Miller will do it for you. Visit it now. Now, let's get back to Arthur, because the hollow time is about to end, and the price of his victory is something you need to see to believe. The hollow time reached its nadir in the silence of a roadside motel. Elias, the man who had been the only anchor of reality in Arthur's crumbling world, passed away in his sleep. He left behind no money, no property, and no final words of comfort. What he left was a heavy professional-grade toolbox and a crumpled contact number for a private contractor in the suburbs. In the world of Blasphemous Chronicles, this is the true passing of the torch. Arthur didn't inherit a fortune, he inherited the means of production. The cold, heavy steel of a dead man's life. He took those tools not with grief, but with a mechanical fury. He didn't cry for Elias. He didn't have the biological resources left for tears. Instead, he channeled every ounce of his remaining life force into the metal. He contacted the contractor and entered a period of total self-imposed isolation. He vanished into the suburbs, working on high-end residential projects, fixing the intricate mistakes of men who had everything but knew nothing. This was the phase of the absolute instrument. For 2 more years, Arthur lived as a monk of the machine. He stopped being a man who missed his family and became a function that generated capital. He lived on nothing but bread and tap water, sleeping on the floors of the houses he was renovating. Every dollar was hoarded with the obsession of a dragon. He stopped looking at the purple platform, and he no longer heard the echoes of Pepe the Clown. Those distractions were for people who still had hope or desire. Arthur had neither. He had only a mission to acquire the elixir. He spent his nights studying blueprints until his eyes bled, mastering every trade from electrical engineering to structural masonry. He became so efficient that he was no longer human. He was a biological extension of Elias's toolbox. He won the war against the city not by outsmarting it, but by out-enduring it. He became more indifferent than the glass towers, more resilient than the greasy rain. Finally, the day came. Arthur stood in a bank lobby, his hands scarred and permanently stained with grease, holding a bank draft. It was the elixir. It was a number large enough to buy his house in the Rust Belt outright, to pay for every medical bill, every college fund, and every debt his family had ever incurred. He had done it. He had achieved the impossible. But as he looked at his reflection in the polished marble of the bank, he didn't recognize the man looking back. The softness around the eyes was gone. The hesitation in the voice had been replaced by a cold, staccato efficiency. He had gained the knowledge that survival is not a shared journey. It is a brutal transaction where you pay with your soul to save your skin. He had the money, but he had lost the ability to feel the value of it. To Arthur, The bank draft wasn't a ticket to freedom, it was the receipt for a life he had already spent. The journey back was a blur of shifting landscapes. As the bus moved away from the coast and back toward the rotting heart of the Rust Belt, Arthur watched the world through the window like a man watching a film in a language he no longer spoke. When he finally stepped off the bus in his hometown, he was wearing a crisp, new coat. His bag was full of the latest gadgets, expensive toys, and jewelry for a family he had lived for, but hadn't lived with for years. He walked down the main street, and the buildings that used to haunt his dreams now looked like dollhouses. They were small, fragile, and pathetic. He saw the rot, the peeling paint, and the tired eyes of the neighbors he used to know, and he felt nothing but a distant, clinical pity. He was a titan returning to a village of ghosts. He reached his front door, the same door he had walked out of in the middle of the night years ago. He entered without knocking. It was, after all, his house. His wife was in the kitchen, and for a second, time seemed to collapse. She ran to him, throwing her arms around him, but as she pressed her face against his chest, she flinches. She didn't find the warmth of the husband she remembered. She found the hardness of his shoulders, a body that had become as rigid as the steel beams he had spent years bolting together. She felt the coldness of his presence. His children came into the room, and the scene was like a tableau of a tragedy. He handed them the gadgets, the shiny plastic distractions of the modern world, and they thanked him with the polite, terrified caution one shows a stranger who has wandered into your home. They looked at the hero who had saved them, and all they saw was an intruder with familiar features. Arthur stood in the center of the living room he had paid for with his own deshumanization. He looked at the family he had saved, and he realized the final, crushing truth of the transaction. You can buy the house, you can heat the rooms, and you can fill the table with food, but you cannot buy back the years of shared breath. He had protected the shell of his family while the spirit of it had moved on without him. He was a myth that had become flesh, and in doing so he had become a monster of utility. He had saved the home, but in the process he had become a man who had no home to return to. The elixir was in the bank, the debt was gone, and the house was warm. But Arthur was still standing in the freezing rain of the coast, alone with Elias's tools, wondering when the return was actually supposed to begin. He had won the war, and the victory was a tomb. Arthur's story doesn't end with a happily ever after, because the system doesn't deal in happiness, it deals in equilibrium. The bank account is full, the lights are on, and the cough in the next room has finally been silenced by expensive medicine. By all measurable standards of the modern world, Arthur is a success. He is the provider. He is the man who did what had to be done. But as you watched him standing in that warm living room looking like a stranger in his own life, you felt it too. You felt the hollow vibration of a victory that cost more than the prize was worth. This is the reality of the elixir in the 21st century. It's not a magical potion that heals the land, it's a terminal settlement. Arthur didn't just trade his time for money, he traded his presence for utility. And once you make that trade, there is no refund policy. The man who could have enjoyed that home died years ago in a scrapped van, and the entity that returned is just the ghost of his labor. We live in a culture that worships the grind, that romanticizes the sacrifice, and that tells you that your only value lies in what you can provide. They want you to be like Arthur. They want you to be so focused on the final notices and the debt that you don't notice the moment your soul is formatted to fit the needs of the city. They want you to be a hero of the transaction, a martyr of the bank draft. But look at the price. Look at the children who look at their father as if he were a piece of furniture that suddenly started breathing. Look at the wife who flinches at the touch of a man whose skin has turned to stone. This is the dismantled return. This is what happens when you win the war using the enemy's weapons. You become the enemy, but why does this happen? Why is the return always so broken? Is it Arthur's fault for leaving, or is the architecture of the return intentionally designed to fail? These are the questions that the system doesn't want you to ask. They want you to just be grateful that the bills are paid. They want you to ignore the silence at the dinner table. But we aren't going to ignore it. We are going to deconstruct it. We are going to look at the hero's journey and reveal it for what it truly is, a manufacturing process for the obedient and the hollow. Arthur is just one case study in a global experiment of deshumanization, and it is time we look at the blueprints of the cage he built for himself. This is only the first part of the fracture. You've seen the story, you've felt the coldness of Arthur's victory, and you've witnessed the price of the elixir. But on Friday we are going deeper. We are going to move beyond the narrative and into the anatomy of the wound. Krista will be back to explain exactly why the system hates the man who returns with the truth, and why the most dangerous thing you can do is survive the labyrinth with your humanity intact. We will decode the Herida del Retorno, the wound of the return, and analyze the specific mechanisms that make the homecoming of the initiated a death sentence for the old self. If you've ever felt like an alien in your own home, or if you've ever looked at the things you've bought and wondered where the you went that was supposed to enjoy them, you cannot miss the next video. We are going to dismantle the myth of success and show you the exit that Arthur couldn't find. Until then, I want you to look at your own elixirs. Look at what you're working for and ask yourself, who will be left to hold it when the work is done? Are you building a home or are you just financing a tomb? Go to the website, reflect on the transaction, and for the love of whatever you still hold sacred, don't let the city format your heart. We are the architects of our own liberation, or we are the slaves of our own survival. The choice is made every single day, in every single hour of the grind. Arthur made his choice and now he has to live in the silence of it. Don't follow him into the gray. We are going to break the code of the hero's return once and for all. Until then, stay sharp, stay sovereign, and above all, I am Krista, the chronicler. Until next time, keep blasphemous, folks.